On this Saturday night, devastation and celebration as abortion clinics start shutting down in some U.S. states. The places where doctors can now face jail time.
My body, my choice!
Our Jackson Prosco is in a state with one of the most restrictive bans in America. Camping out to fly out.
I've been trying to get this passport since February.
Ottawa's plan to shorten winding passport lines and irritating delays. Another shortage caused by the pandemic.
Unfortunately, about a week before the lessons were supposed to happen, it was canceled because they didn't have lifeguards.
The ripple down of canceled lifeguarding courses and what it means for the summer ahead. From Timmins to the moon.
It sounds crazy until someone's clever enough to make it happen.
A Canadian startup's surprising new way to get to space for less.
Global National with Farah Nasser.
Good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Tensions are high 24 hours after the overturning of Roe v. Wade as America takes stock. Protests are turning hostile in some U.S. cities as demonstrations carry on into the second day. And in some places, the Supreme Court decision is having immediate implications. Abortion clinics are shutting their doors, and in states where it's illegal to terminate a pregnancy, doctors who disobey could face years in prison. Jennifer Johnson starts us off tonight at the epicenter of the historic decision in Washington.
From coast to coast, angry protests after the Supreme Court's expected but still shocking decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, which has guaranteed a woman's right to abortion for the past 50 years.
We won't go back!
My first reaction was fury at what it means that now legally the status of women in America is breeder and incubator.
I'm going to give you a doctor's name.
Generations of women thought this day would never come, that an established law for half a century would never be overturned. It was devastating news for Elizabeth Kiefer Krause, who had to make the excruciating decision to have 2 late-term abortions to save her own life.
And there are about 26,000 of us every year who are in situations like mine.
After the High Court's decision, 26 states will soon make abortions illegal or severely restrict them. Last year, over 300,000 abortions were performed in those states. Already, Arkansas state leaders have taken action.
Restoring to the state of Arkansas the authority to prohibit abortion.
Anyone caught performing an abortion in Arkansas now faces 10 years in prison. In Wisconsin, Planned Parenthood immediately stopped performing abortions. The medical director had to break the news to patients in the waiting room.
Today, I had to look people in the eye and turn them away when they were seeking abortions.
In at least 8 states, abortions will be illegal, even in cases of rape and incest. Women will now be forced to travel to other states to get an abortion, but that will be costly. Situations may become dire for many.
It's poor women, it's black women, it's immigrant women who are going to be most affected by this because they are the ones who do not have the resources to travel 3 states away where abortion might be legal.
Anti-abortion activists are vowing to try even harder to stop these women from traveling to other states to obtain abortions.
We are going to have to just push even harder than we have been to encourage women to let their baby live and to seek out the resources that are available.
President Joe Biden is already promising to protect access to FDA-approved abortion pills. But passing a federal law in Congress guaranteeing a woman's right to abortion has no chance of getting through the divided Senate. Why women now say their voices have to be heard at the ballot box come November. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
13 U.S. states have so-called trigger bans in which an abortion ban would or could automatically take effect in the absence of Roe v. Wade. One of those states is Tennessee, where the law there empowers the state to enact a near-total abortion ban within 30 days of the U.S. Supreme Court overturning the ruling. With more, we find our Jackson Prosco in Nashville tonight. Jackson.
Farah, Tennessee will soon have some of the most restrictive abortion laws in the U.S., and there's now a rush to bring them into effect as quickly as possible. The decision from the Supreme Court triggered a 30-day countdown in the state on a full abortion ban with no exceptions for cases of rape or incest. But more immediately, the state is seeing whether the courts will lift an existing stay on the heartbeat bill the state passed in 2020 that banned abortion after 6 weeks. That bill was blocked by the courts at the time. If the stay is lifted, the effect will be almost immediate. Now, as you can imagine, women in the state are deeply worried about what this means for them. Tennessee already ranks 41st out of the 50 states for the health of women and children, and black women in particular are 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications than white women.
This is definitely another way to keep people down. Like in poverty, if we have a kid, that takes so much of our time. You have to call off work, you can't get paid, they don't pay for leave of absence if you have a child, anything like that. The U.S. doesn't do that.
I feel it is a war on women, we're losing our rights as we speak. It's very upsetting and frustrating.
Now, staff at the local Planned Parenthood clinic tell me they plan to reopen for business as usual on Monday, and they will continue providing abortions until they're told they no longer can. But understanding that the clock is ticking, they say their focus will shift to helping women in Tennessee travel out of state to receive care. Farah?
Jackson Prosco in Nashville for us this evening. Thank you, Jackson. U.S. President Joe Biden has signed the most sweeping gun violence bill in decades into law. The bipartisan legislation toughens background checks for young gun buyers. It also provides funding for mental health services and closes the so-called boyfriend loophole by keeping guns away from dating partners convicted of abuse. However, it does not ban assault weapons or require background checks for all gun purchases.
Well, this bill doesn't do everything I want. It does include actions I've long called for that are going to save lives.
Biden signed the $13 billion bill just before leaving Washington for the G7 summit in Germany. For months, backlogs at airports and passport and immigration processing delays has made travel that much more frustrating for Canadians. Well, now, the Prime Minister has set up a special task force to help with the problem with a new sense of urgency. Abigail Bimman looks at the state of passport delays in this country and why the union says it was all avoidable.
From trying to keep warm
Take an extra one just in case.
to beating the heat, Canadians across the country have been camping out or sticking it out at passport offices. These seniors couldn't believe the scene in Surrey, BC, and took it upon themselves to hand out water.
Shame on this country. Shame on this government. Shame.
The stories of wait times seem unbelievable.
I've been sleeping here every day during the week.
So this is night number 3 for me of all night at a passport place.
And some are dire.
My mother-in-law is in hospital. She's not doing well, so we need to go and see her urgently.
I certainly believe the problem was predictable and avoidable.
The head of the union representing passport officers says they've been warning the government of problems since last year. The first 10-year renewal passports were issued in 2013, and with some countries requiring at least 6 months until expiry, they wanted the government to prepare for a run on applications in 2022, plus add in the easing of travel restrictions. Now, massive backlogs and waits have led to some scary situations. Employees swarmed or followed to their vehicles.
We've had employees spat at in offices. We've had employees pushed, shoved, screamed at, psychologically harassed.
Labor shortage, a major issue not helped by those conditions. The government has committed to hiring hundreds of new staff. Training takes 12 to 15 weeks, promising the first cohort will be ready to work next week.
I think people are fed up with excuses. There shouldn't be any. There should be a realization that we need to move faster.
Minister Mark Miller co-chairs a new task force announced Saturday, trying to improve access to government services, including passports, airport wait times, and immigration backlogs. He says the 10 ministers will meet early next week and work through the summer to find both short, medium, and long-term solutions.
Canadians do not deserve this type of service from their government, and they have every right to be mad as hell about it.
How fast they find those solutions remains to be seen. Abigail Bimman, Global News, Ottawa.
And the Prime Minister is currently on his way to Germany for a key meeting of G7 leaders, but he started his day in Rwanda, finishing up his work at the Commonwealth Heads of Government Summit. As our chief political correspondent David Aiken reports, the topic at hand for all of these meetings, global food insecurity.
We need you to be the leaders you are today.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau started his final day at the Commonwealth Summit, encouraging young people to get involved in politics. But he and the other prime ministers and presidents at this summit spent much time talking about the global food crisis they say is caused by Russia.
They actually deliberately and specifically targeted grain storage facilities to destroy Ukrainian grain. They've been stealing grain. They have been worsening the food crisis across the global south.
In Berlin Friday, Canada, the U.S., and 40 other countries held a pre-G7 conference to address the world food shortage.
So the combination that we've seen of COVID, of climate, and now conflict is creating an even graver crisis of food insecurity.
To help, Canada announced here in Rwanda it will provide the UN's World Food Program with $250 million. And at the Berlin conference, International Development Minister Harjit Sajjan announced an additional $5 million to help with food shortages, specifically in sub-Saharan Africa.
And we're working on plans for more. It is far too easy to forget that food insecurity does not impact everyone the same. It hits the poorest the hardest.
Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin on Friday told leaders from China, India, South Africa, and elsewhere that it was the economic policies of the West, of the very leaders about to meet in Germany, that is to blame for the food crisis. In fact, Russian cruise missiles have targeted grain silos at Ukraine ports.
We have seen time and time again that Russia, and specifically Vladimir Putin, lie. They are currently blockading the port of Odessa.
Now, Trudeau did not specify what new measures Canada could employ to help find more food to feed the world, but his officials said that back in Ottawa, several government departments are trying to figure out ways to help. And it could include everything from technology transfer to sending Canadian rail and port workers abroad. Almost certainly it will involve sending more money. Farah.
All right, that's David Aiken in Kigali, Rwanda. Thank you, David. Thousands of Norwegians took to the streets of Oslo today, just hours after 2 people were killed in a deadly shooting rampage during Pride celebrations. They marched in a show of solidarity and defiance after the Oslo Pride Parade was canceled over security concerns. Early this morning, 2 people were killed and more than 20 others wounded when a gunman opened fire inside and near a popular LGBTQ bar. A 42-year-old man's been arrested and charged with terrorism. Norway has since raised its terror alert level to its highest level. Coming up, with the world in a fragile state, is Canada's army ready? Concerns from our country's top soldier. Plus, a swimming teacher shortage. Why the next generation of lifeguards haven't been trained yet. Next week, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will head to Madrid for the 2022 NATO summit. Now, he's expected to show off Canada's new defense spending, but it may not be all it's cracked up to be, or even that new. Our Ottawa Bureau Chief Mercedes Stevenson sat down with Canada's Chief of the Defence Staff, General Wayne Eyre, on this week's edition of the West Block. Mercedes.
Farah, Canada's top soldier, is worried about global security, saying we are entering an unprecedented time of potential conflict, and the Canadian Armed Forces need the funds to be able to fight. But a recent government pledge made amidst fighter jet fanfare to pour $4.9 billion into continental defense may not be all that it appeared to be. Defense sources say the money may not be new, but rather recycled from within existing Department of National Defense programs, and that's leading to fear of possible cuts. Canada's top soldier says there has been no discussion of cuts at this time, but even he wasn't sure where the supposedly new money is coming from.
I haven't completely figured out myself the source of funds for this, so I can't say definitively where it's coming from. You know, I will say though the announcement was welcome.
Recycled money would obviously be very different than an injection of all new billions of dollars, and will raise questions about Canada's commitment to defense spending, which already falls well short of the 2% NATO benchmark. That's what the U.S. and others have been pressing Canada to reach. The Minister of National Defence's office said they would provide a statement to Global News, but did not return our request for comment by deadline about where the money was coming from. And there's no question the Canadian Armed Forces need money in an increasingly dangerous world. General Eyre warns the global order may be at a turning point, more fragile than it's been in generations. We've seen signs of that unraveling. Russia's invasion of Ukraine is now in its 4th month. Meanwhile, Chinese fighter jets have been aggressively buzzing Canadian and Australian aircraft in international airspace. Eyre says Canadians should brace for more confrontation between liberal democracies like Canada on one hand and authoritarian regimes on the other.
Over the course of the last number of weeks, I've traveled and have had numerous conversations with my counterparts, chiefs of defense in our closest allies in Europe, in Asia Pacific, and they are all very concerned. The threat of global conflict, of great power conflict, is as great as it has been in decades. So we need to be worried.
We'll have more on that and how the military is trying to deal with sexual misconduct ahead on the show tomorrow. Farah?
All right, Mercedes Stevenson in Ottawa. Thank you, Mercedes. And you can watch Mercedes' full interview with Canada's Chief of the Defence Staff tomorrow on the West Block, right here on Global. Ahead, another pandemic pitfall, why lifeguards are in short supply this summer season.
You're watching Global National.
Kids looking to cool off this summer at the beach or pool may face disappointment as the country grapples with a major lifeguard shortage. Swim instructors have also become hard to come by, and it is all a byproduct of the pandemic. And as Heather Yorks-West explains, with pools open again and kids eager to learn swimming skills, municipalities are scrambling to cope.
After a long, cold winter, Brooke Duval is looking forward to spending a summer with her kids in the water. But making sure her children have the swimming skills they need has not been easy.
Through the pandemic was tough because there were lessons started and then canceled, and then for the most part there weren't lessons at all.
Then, when the Duvals finally found lessons this spring,
unfortunately, about a week before the lessons were supposed to happen, it was canceled because they didn't have lifeguards.
The City of Toronto says it's had to cancel about 15% of its summer swim programs because of staffing. In Calgary, that number is 55%. But the problem extends nationwide.
It really stemmed from the pandemic 2 years ago when everything shut down in March of 2020. Many lifeguards and swim instructors were furloughed or lost their jobs.
And not everyone has come back. The shutdown has also meant the next generation of lifeguards who would usually be preparing for the role in their early teens haven't been able to access the necessary courses. Across the country, communities have had to reduce pool hours and swim programs.
I think it's going to take time for us to get back to our pre-pandemic service level. Over the next year, we're going to work diligently at it.
The tight labor market has meant many municipalities have had to get creative. West Vancouver found success recruiting uncertified candidates early in the season.
The selected candidates were then offered the opportunity to have free training, and we would put them through their NL, their National Lifeguard, and their WSI, which is their water safety instructor. We are now predicting that we will be fully staffed by the middle of July.
Back in Toronto, Duval is hopeful for better luck finding lessons this fall, planning to teach her boys some skills herself over the summer as they spend as much time as they can at the pool. Heather Yorks-West, Global News, Calgary.
Next, what if it didn't cost a lot to get to space? A Canadian startup competing with SpaceX to send cargo to the moon. The term space race became popular during the Cold War as the U.S. and Russia competed to be the first to put an astronaut on the moon. Well, today, the race is no longer just between two countries. Space is rapidly becoming more accessible to developing nations and companies. Right now, the only way to get to outer space is to launch an extremely expensive and environmentally damaging rocket. But what if there was a cheaper, more eco-friendly way? Mike Drolet reports.
There's only ever been one way to launch a rocket: brute force. Earth's atmosphere is just too dense to do it any other way. Enter Space Ride, a Canadian startup which aims to launch its rockets from high-altitude balloons. When you think of rocket manufacturing, the mind goes to Cape Canaveral, Florida, Houston, Star City, Russia. Certainly not here. Unit 12 of this nondescript office complex in Concord, Ontario. But technology has clearly evolved, so here we are, Canada's first rocket factory.
We are building an on-demand, affordable, and frequent access to outer space, near and far. Now, that might be a bit confusing.
A bit? Let's break it down. A balloon will carry SpaceRide's rocket 3 times higher than commercial airlines fly. From there, microcomputers determine the rocket's trajectory before it launches into the atmosphere. Unlike commercial tourist rockets, SpaceRide won't be transporting people.
It's only for package delivery, and by package it could be satellites, it could be a tool to fix something in space.
And what makes them unique is the ability to launch on short notice. It costs upwards of $1 million to reserve a spot on SpaceX's rockets. SpaceRide will transport the same amount of equipment for $250,000. The first launch from Timmins, Ontario is planned for next year, and then in 2024 they hope to transport a satellite to orbit the moon.
It sounds crazy until someone's clever enough to make it happen, and then everybody goes, oh yeah, we always needed that, we just never could do it before.
It's an Uber-like service for space. Put another way, it's an elegant solution to a brute force problem. Mike Drolet, Global News, Toronto.
Canadian ingenuity at its best. That is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Farah Nasser, and on behalf of our whole crew, I want to thank you so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. Tonight's Your Canada is Killarney, Ontario. We love seeing your Canada, so please keep emailing us those photos. The address is viewers@globalnational.com. Until I see you tomorrow, take care of yourselves and each other. Have a great Saturday night.